Mr. Mundy, just unmute your mic.
Thought I did. Okay. All right. Are we ready?
Not hearing me? Not hearing me?
So we're good? All right. This is Ben Mundy, Chair of the Community Redevelopment Agency Board. It is May 7th, and I am calling to order this meeting that we're having via computer and web and internet and how else we're all getting together. So welcome to all board members, CRA staff, other city staff, and our visitors from the community. So I will start out with a roll call of our board members. So Ben Mundy, hi, I'm here. Pastor Lake.
Yeah, board members, just unmute your mic. Say you're here.
Pastor Lake. Or Jonathan, you just want to go around?
He seems to be having connection issues, but I do see him. He is here.
Okay. Zelda Abram.
Zelda's here.
Dean Boring. Harry Bryant.
Present.
Brandon Eady.
Here.
Brian Godding. Brian.
Here.
Okay. Frank Lansford.
Here.
Commissioner Madden.
Present.
Corey Petcock. Or what's going on now, but so anyway, as usual, we have our normal agenda that we'll be going through, and we'll start with a financial update and project tracker. I believe we all received this in our packet, and I will ask Elise if he has any comments he would like to make.
I do, relative to the project tracker, Mr. Chair. Welcome, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. On the project tracker, I just want to point out that our downtown Bark Park is just currently on hold. It's something that we decided to hold internally until we were in a better fiscal situation or climate before moving forward with that project. So that's something that you'll see as just a potential slowdown there with the project. In terms of where we left off before we entered this world of COVID, we've got some progress on our Providence Road project. It's actually a full redesign of Providence Road. And so recently held a selection committee meeting, and we've come to a decision on the firm that we think is best qualified to provide those design services so that we may move that forward. So you'll see that going public for notice to award that contract here soon. And then also the Oak Street Development Agreement for the CRA's property held North Massachusetts Avenue, adjacent to the old Greyhound site. We're in a good spot with that development agreement. It'll be going forward to City Commission likely in June for adoption of that development agreement, and then we'll enter into our timeline for getting the shovel in the ground. Outside of the projects there, the financials are presented before you, and if you have any questions, I'll hold a second to take any questions you may have.
So board, any questions or comments about our financial update and project tracker? And barring no comments, go ahead.
Oh, I don't see any, Mr. Mundy. Any hands?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Barring no further input, I think we will move on to our housekeeping issues. And at this point in time, we don't have any listed, but again, I'll defer to Elise, and you can let us know if there's anything that's come up.
Nothing has come up, but I just want to say that we we did publish our annual report, so it's something that's been lost in these times as well. Big thank you to all the staff and the folks who contributed out in the community as well to help us put forth a quality product and just talk about the work we do here at the CRA. Really, really appreciate Jonathan's efforts and Tara Lynn's efforts to push that out, and our partner at Sierra Creative as well for.
Entertain a motion for approval.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
So we had a motion, and Jonathan, I can't see, so hopefully you and Jasmine are documenting the motion and the seconds.
Yes, the motion was Mr. Edie, second by Commissioner Madden.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? And barring none, I will again do a roll call for approval of our minutes. I'll start with myself and I'll say aye. Pastor Lake.
Aye, Eddie Lake. Jacob.
Zelda.
Aye.
Dean.
Dean, go ahead.
Sorry.
Approval of minutes.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Harry.
Aye.
Brandon.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Frank.
Aye.
Commissioner Madden.
Aye.
And Cliff.
Aye.
Thank you. So our minutes have been approved. And now we can go on to our first new business, and that is the independent financial audit. I know that was included in our packet that we received. I believe the results were excellent, showing that everything is in good line. Elise, is there anything you would like to say further?
Yes, I just want to say that the full audit is available online as well on our website as required by statute. So if you want some in-depth reading about our financial health and assets, please indulge, and just asking that we accept the audit as presented here, pages 8 through 12.
Okay, thank you, Elise. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the audit as presented.
Motion to accept as presented. Brian?
Zelda, second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Barring any further discussion, again, a roll call with myself. I guess aye or acknowledged, yes. Pastor Lake.
Mr. Mundy, he seems to be having connectivity issues, but we can continue because we have.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Ben, may I move for unanimous consent on this, and then that way we just open it up for anyone who has an objection can say nay?
I will defer to Jonathan on the procedures that have been used on other meetings. Can we do that?
I believe not. Elise, would you like to clarify?
So I would like to leave that to Jared. Jared is legal counsel. He's on the line.
Okay.
With me.
Oh,
Jared is the newest assistant city attorney. I should have introduced him at the start of the meeting. Now, procedurally, Jared, are we allowed to do that unanimous?
Unanimous consent.
It's not.
It is part of Robert's rules.
Right. It's not a practice that the other boards have been utilizing from my observation so far in this virtual format. The Robert's rules are acceptable, but I think I would prefer for the roll call vote. And to the extent that connection issues make it unclear, I would just treat that as an abstention.
Okay.
So anyone with connection issues will be an abstention from the vote there. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, on acceptance and approval of our financial audit, I will continue. I believe was Dean. Dean, had you said aye or nay? Aye. Okay. Harry?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Frank?
Aye.
Commissioner Madden?
Aye.
And Cliff?
Aye.
Okay, thank you to everyone. And this is just another, just clarification on my end. Is it considered acceptable if I strictly call on the commissioner or the board members as first name only? They were all identified by first and last name when we started the meeting, and I just want to make sure I'm okay with that.
As long as the clerk is clear on who you're referring to, I don't see any issues with it.
Okay, thank you. And luckily, we don't have any two people with the same name, so that works well. Okay, so now we move on to our first new, well, actually second new business, but first actual real project, and that's the rec room project, the former Firestone Tire building on Massachusetts Avenue. And I believe, is it Damaris that's going to present this?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so you have the floor.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. Next slide, please. The rec room is housed in a 10,600 square foot historic building located in 202 North Massachusetts Avenue in downtown CRA district. It has been vacant since 2017. The building has been modified throughout the years. The non-contributing historic building was built in 1930 and housed the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, as mentioned earlier. The property was purchased last year by Barn Management, and the new business rec room will function as an arcade and event space. The new business owner, Con O'Leary, has proposed a complete renovation of the current structure and parking lot to include interior build-out, new outdoor seating, and exterior enhancements. The renovation costs, the applicant has provided a preliminary scope of work that includes complete electrical rewiring, new HVAC ductwork, brand new ADA compliant restrooms, and plumbing improvements. The improvements are projected to cost about $115,000. The business owner is expected to spend approximately another $181,000 in interior improvements. The construction commenced in April, and the completion of the project is anticipated for the end of June 2020. Lakeland CRA does not have a grant program in place within the downtown redevelopment district to review the grant request administratively. So staff has brought the request before the board for consideration. The applicant is seeking a total grant award of up to $100,000. The improvements are consistent with the downtown redevelopment plan and will contribute to the physical improvement and economic viability of the area. A quote from the downtown redevelopment plan states that the true potential of downtown Lakeland can only be realized through the attraction of people. At this time, the board's discretion to approve the funding for proposed project, and in the memo there are attachments of the schedule and the budget and sketch. On this slide in front of you, it does list the improvements, the plumbing, the HVAC, and the upgrading electric wiring, and the total cost of that. Next slide, please. This here's their floor plan and the improvements that they are planning on. And next slide. They've started some of the demolition. They have the electrical and the grease traps and all the interior started. If you can turn to one more slide, please. And this here shows some of the exterior that they are planning to improve upon, some lighting, and also some of the interior that has already been painted and improved upon. And that is my last slide, I believe.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Public comment on any of these items. Just for anyone watching the broadcast, there is a number at the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to join and give a comment on anything, you can dial in using that number.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you, Damaris. And
You're welcome.
something that I know came up typically, and we understand that there is no grant program for the downtown area, and that's the reason this staff has brought this to the board. But typically, we also like to get these requests before construction has actually started, and I would just like ask Elise if you would address that.
Sure, Mr. Chair. This particular request was in the pipeline, I would say back in February, but the applicant wasn't quite prepared to go forward at the time. And then we ended up having a cancellation with COVID. And so what we didn't want to do is penalize the applicant because of our inability to handle this, infrastructure wise. So we said, listen, you've got money on the table, you've got a project timeline, go ahead and get your project started, because ideally, once we come out of the situation that we're in, this is a place that people will want to go. So, just trying to be flexible given the circumstances of the world around us, and ideally, they would receive the same consideration as they would have before.
Okay. Thank you, Elise. I just wanted to get that input for the record. And also, at this point, before I start getting comments from board members, would anyone from the applicant side like to present their comments to the board?
We do have representatives from the rec room on the call. If you guys can turn your camera on, you can go ahead and address the board.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having us here. My name is Connor Leary. We're coming to you from Calvin Penn on South Florida Avenue. With me is Barrett Hollis and Rudy Brown. I'll just do a short and sweet presentation. This is our third project in Lakeland, and it's an idea that has worked well in other metropolitan areas, notably like Parks and Rec in St. Pete and Player One in Orlando. Gaming has become the #1 revenue generator in entertainment in the country. And we really wanted to have a space where people could enjoy themselves, be a communal space, but also not just be revolved around the consumption of alcohol. So we designed the space for activities and games. We'll have a private room where people can congregate and gather within, once that becomes viable. We have about 1,000 square foot of outside space that will be available for the public. And really, we wanted to kind of be a vibrant part of the corridor between the Joinery in Merton and downtown. I'll let Barrett talk a little bit about the space, and then we'll pivot to Rudy Brown and talk a little bit about build out, but it should be short and sweet.
Yeah, I'll let Con kind of take the lead on this one, because this is my first venture like this. But
and just excuse me just a moment. Would you state your name clearly for everyone?
Yeah, my name is Barrett Hollis.
Okay, thank you.
And like I was saying, I've always had an idea like this. I just don't have any experience in this realm. So when I heard that the guys from Cotton Pen are doing something like this, I immediately, got in touch with them and Man, we were definitely on the same page, and I think it's going to be something really cool for downtown and all of Lakeland. And it's going to be a clean, fresh, new, no smoking, kind of more family-friendly place, and I'm really excited about it.
And then Rudy Brown is going to talk a little bit about just some of the build-out procedures.
Hi, I'm Rudy Brown, contractor. The build-out has been a bit difficult. As you can imagine, as old as what the Firestone building is, there's a lot of things that we discovered that no one knew they were there. But we've worked all through it. And the City of Lakeland has been great. Exactly like last week, they came out, cambered some sewer lines for us and location of the grease trap that we added. Found a bunch of lines that were abandoned that no one knew about, and everything's fallen into place. So.
And then just to close a little bit, this is truly a redevelopment of a property that's been closed since 2017. When I first moved to Lakeland, I drove by this property and I was super impressed by just the aesthetics of it. And it was really screamed out to me like a retail spot where people could congregate and enjoy. And so that's why we're super excited to present to you guys and hopefully get your support.
Okay, thank you. Having heard from staff and from the applicants, I'll now open it up for board member comments.
Mr. Wiley, go ahead.
Chair, do we have a motion on the table?
We don't have a motion at this point.
Can I speak? Cliff Wiley. We really don't have a lot of money in the downtown budget, little or no money, and I'd be open to putting some money in. I'm not sure that we should commit to $100,000 worth of money. Elise, what's our budget for this year on all this stuff?
Sure. So we do carry.
Available.
Yes, Mr. Wiley. This is Elise, and we do carry some money in the budget for downtown projects. It's not a ton of money because, as you all know, the downtown debt service, it does loom over us. However, we set aside monies for second floor renovations so that we can try to attract that mixed-use development, particularly around Munn Park. There are the historic cases that you mentioned where we have allocated funding to structures that aren't in the best of shape, or they're in key locations that would add that connectivity within our downtown. So we did $65,000 for Swan Brewing and then $250,000 for the joinery. Within the budget, we carry about $100,000 annually for small project assistance. We did roll over some funds from last year into the budget as well.
All right, thank you, Elise. Any other comment, Cliff?
I do have a comment, if it's appropriate now. This is Commissioner Madden.
Sure.
So I just want to say big kudos to the gentleman here presenting today and how excited I am. And, certainly, none of us predicted that we would be where we are today with the global pandemic. And, as a city commissioner acting as the CRA, this, of course, will have to go through the city commission and with the scrutiny and transparency, in which we want to operate, because certainly any grant we give is a gift of the taxpayer. I am just finding myself, really reticent to spend any money right now. I'm sure like everyone is personally with their own budgets, with the uncertainty. I know that, the dog part was something that I advocated and was excited about, but now we're going to have to postpone that. I know that, within the city, we're on a spending freeze and might have to make some big O&B cuts. And my email box is every day full from downtown businesses who are struggling to survive and don't know if they're going to make it, and requesting rent relief. And so, I just want you gentlemen to know how proud I am of you and how excited I am for this venture, that I wish you well, and I will absolutely come and be a patron. I don't know if right now, this month, I could vote yes, only because, and I want you to know that it's only because of, thinking about, this is a transparent government and there's sunshine and, the optics of investing in one downtown business when it's not really an official grant that we have, knowing that so many people have reached out to me and asked for some kind of assistance in their downtown business. That really does, it's the only reason I'm not going to be able to support this today. I know it's not your fault, that we had this pandemic, and, I really was so excited to get to see this today, and I'm so excited for it to open. I hope that this isn't an impediment if it doesn't get to, it's only one person. So you know what, you might get all of the votes you need today, and I would celebrate with you. But for me personally, as a commissioner, feeling a huge responsibility and weight on my shoulder with the other downtown businesses who are suffering so much right now, I just wouldn't be able to support it right now. So I just wanted to explain myself to you. I can't see your picture. I wish I could look you in the face and tell you this, because I am so excited, and I hope that we're going to reemerge better and brighter than ever. But we just don't know when that will be. And so because of that, I'm just, that's why I'll be, unable to vote yes today.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your words.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Madden. Any other board members?
Yep. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on Commissioner Madden's comments. Commissioner Madden, I felt originally when I saw this, I felt very much the same way. I'm not getting the input from the community that you are. However, this is something where I feel like it's necessary in one way or other to support, whether that's the full amount or a lesser amount, like Cliff was suggesting. And my thinking on it is just real simple, in that this money was set aside to be invested in redevelopment for this year. This money is here for us to fulfill the purpose of the CRA, which is investing specifically in redevelopment. The work that they are doing to this building in updating the mechanicals of it and turning it into a usable space, and I really see it as a connectivity point in bridging, kind of the gap between Lake Mirror, where the joinery is, and Munn Park. And I think that's one of the main reasons that I'm really in favor of supporting this is having that, kind of connective grouping for pedestrians to think, oh, well, I can walk from Munn Park to the rec room, then to the joinery. And I think big picture that it really fits what we're wanting to do. And I'd encourage all of us, let's not get too psyched out about the moment that we are in, and let's make smart decisions that are going to support our goals for the remainder of the existence of the CRA, the next 10, 12 years, however long we have. And I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to invest in a business that's when businesses do need investment and the economy does need a little bit of extra boost. And when we're in a position where we have these funds set aside for redevelopment, I don't think it's smart to hold tight to those and not necessarily put them into action when people really need them.
Mr. Chair, I believe Elise had his hand raised.
All right, Elise?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brandon.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just for a point of clarity, Commissioner, this is an appropriated line item, so it would not have to go forward for a reappropriation of funding. It is a built-in line item for small project assistance for the redevelopment of properties downtown, just for that point of clarity, if there was any misunderstanding there.
Thank you, Elise. So thus far I've heard some reluctance, although I'm hearing support for the project, some reluctance potentially for approval or reluctance to the dollar amount. The request was for up to $100,000. So I'm open for more comment, and I would definitely entertain a motion if anyone wants to do that at this point in time.
Cliff had his hand raised. And then Brian, just
okay.
Go ahead and unmute your mic.
This is Brian. What was the total dollar amount for items that we would typically do a matching grant fund for? Because I know there was the HVAC system, the electrical, and some facade improvements. And I want to say it was between $110,000 and $120,000 for those items. Is that correct?
If I may, I'll answer that question for you. So in looking at the submitted documentation, it looks like that is approximately $115,000 for those items that we would typically classify as infill development or infill grant funding would be appropriate to reimburse for those items. So typically we would do a 50% reimbursement on that total amount if it were a Midtown grant or a Dixieland grant. That's how we would handle that.
Okay.
Mr. Wiley, did you have something to say?
Do we have a dollar amount that we would all feel comfortable with? Should I make a motion on a dollar amount?
Cliff, what's the dollar amount
I guess that's the question. Yeah, we are.
I'd like to make a motion that we pitch in $35,000 towards this project.
So I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Hammer Bryant, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to provide a grant. And again, I'm assuming this would be a matching grant once they can prove they spent the amount of money for $35,000. Is that correct, Cliff?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, we don't have any
further discussion?
Public. We don't have any callers from the public, Mr. Chair.
Oh. All right.
Elise,
Thank you.
Could I have a question?
Keeping me in line here. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Cliff. So this is another question for Elise. So you were mentioning that this is already an appropriation on a line item for a downtown renovation. And so does that mean that it could not be spent on any kind of rent relief or any kind of grant program for downtown businesses who have suffered as a result of COVID-19?
That is correct, Commissioner. And we do not have those mechanisms in place unless, of course, there was an interlocal agreement that would allow for those funds to be, reappropriated and spent for that purpose. And I know that we do have those mechanisms in place in Dixieland and Midtown within the redevelopment plan. However, not the case for downtown. And I'll defer to Jared if he has anything to add to that.
No, I don't have anything to add to that.
Then I would say looking at this, because of the matching grant when you first mentioned that there was no grant currently, this seemed kind of like an extra ask to me with funds that were not yet designated. So hearing some of the rationale and, finding it more consistent with our grant of doing a 50% match and knowing that it's on ADA compliant restrooms and HVAC, which, certainly are huge costs for startup businesses, I would support the reduced amount.
Thank you, Commissioner Madden. Any other board member comments? Jonathan, anyone?
Yes.
Pastor Lake.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
Eddie Lake. Yes, I
Pastor
concur.
Lake.
I would agree and support the reduced amount.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like.
Barring none, I'm going to go through a roll call, and I'll start. Oh, okay, go ahead, Dean.
We all know it's location, 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 and what the downtown in general needs is just activity, more positive activity that are going to support the businesses that are trying to provide the goods and services to the people that shop downtown. And I think this is a really, really key building because of the location. It's a gorgeous building. It's on an incredible corner. It's steps away from Counterport 3.0. It's steps away from the 500 to 800 people, however many it is, with Summit that are moving virtually across the street. That kind of a building that can take advantage of that kind of activity downtown that we don't have now, I think would be a huge asset. And no offense, Cliff, but I don't think $35,000 is going to swing it one way or the other.
Cliff has his hand raised. Go ahead, Cliff.
Thank you, Dean. Cliff?
I just wanted to make sure we had some money for other projects that may come up, if we only have 100,000 or thereabout. There may be some other projects that people want to do. If we threw $100,000 at it, we really wouldn't have any money left over for anyone else that may want to do a project or get some assistance in the downtown area. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Cliff.
Ms. Adams, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Zelda. I was wondering if we approve the amount that Cliff suggested, do they have the ability to come back at a later time and ask for more funding? And maybe we'll have more clarity at that point if there are other projects that needed the funds.
I'll defer to Elise on that one.
If I may, I would prefer that we make the decision on the amount today. It's my understanding that they also intend to ask for funds at the LDDA board level as well. I do think that they will likely, their board will likely look at the decision here and make a decision comparable to what we make. I know that the funding is not as robust at the LDDA level, and so will likely be significantly less than what the CRA contributes. So I would just ask that we, make the decision today, and then for whatever amount that the board would like to allocate to the project, and just make that as a final, please.
Elise, could I ask about the LDDA?
Sure.
So is there money specific to renovation, or, I would hate for them to be under the same, choice that I felt, kind of weighing on me about their downtown businesses. If they're going to go there, they may be in the same boat with maybe not as much of an appetite right now as typical. If that's the case, and our money is specific to renovating buildings, I would be open to a negotiation, to save LDDA funds for those downtown businesses, but you would know better than I if that's the case.
They do have funding set aside for this purpose, Commissioner. Again, their budget is not as robust as ours, but they do have some funding set aside for facade improvements and things of that nature.
At least how much do they have set aside?
I do not, off the top of my head, have that exact number.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, I'm sorry?
Yes, Mr. Eady had his hand raised.
Yeah, I had a follow-up question. I had a follow-up question for Dean. Dean, you suggested that 35,000 you feel may not be enough to have a big enough impact. What's a range that you feel would be appropriate for this project?
No, I don't have enough information based on whatever and I don't understand what all the renovations would be, so I'm not sure. I would assume, Barrett has worked real hard on this project, and I don't know if y'all know, but Barrett and I worked together for a long time, and Barrett's one of those kind of people, if he sees something that needs to get done, he's going to he's going to make it get done. So I would recommend that we contribute 75,000 towards this project.
Mr. Chair, the applicant has their hand raised as well. I don't know if you want to hear from them.
I certainly will give them the opportunity to respond or make a comment.
Yes, sir. Thank you for allowing me to respond. I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, with Cobb and Penn and Good Time, we were super fortunate and blessed to take part in the Paycheck Protection Program loan, which really helped us kind of bridge the gap and not have to face difficult decisions as far as like closing or furloughing more employees. The struggle with Rec Room is we didn't have the payroll in place to ask for any funding, emergency funding, and since COVID-19 has put us quite behind schedule, it is, we're kind of at the point where finances are kind of risky, and, we were super looking forward to the CRA being able to help us with this, because really there's nowhere we can turn to where we could get this kind of assistance rather than our own local government. So, with the absence of having anybody on payroll, we are kind of, out of luck asking for kind of federal grants forgiveness. But I just wanted to add that, and I want to appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to our proposals.
All right. Thank you. And I have my own question now. I'm getting the feeling that the board is willing to support this request, but not to the level of the monetary level that was asked for. So if we agree to something less, is that going to impact you being able to finish the project? Because personally, I don't want to commit.
As well, which means that the applicant needs to be able to take the here today that would help you with an understanding of just how much total funding they'd be getting from both organizations. And that's if their board doesn't completely step away from contributing altogether.
Right. Thank you, Elise. So for clarification, these funds would be dispersed upon completion of the, is my understanding.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Unless the motion contains language that deems otherwise.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other comments? Any other motions? And barring none, I'm going to call this question. So to repeat to the board members, as I understand, the motion is to provide a reimbursement grant of up to or for $35,000 for the project. And so now I will proceed with a roll call. I'll start with myself and I'll say aye in support. Pastor Lake. Aye. Zelda Abram.
Aye.
Dean.
Go ahead, Dean.
Unmute myself.
Oh. Dean, go ahead.
Aye.
Thank you. Harry?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Frank?
Actually, Ben, I need to recuse myself from the vote today. We're working on the project for them, so probably a conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Madden?
Aye.
And Cliff?
Aye.
Okay. So other than one recusal, the motion passed unanimously. So thank you to everyone involved with the project. I know it's going to be a great asset in addition to downtown. And, you know, I think back and let's see, Dean would know this, that right across the street used to be the Teen Midway.
That's right.
And so this will be just kind of bringing back some of that energy back to this part of the city. All right, so now we'll move on to our next agenda item, 820 North Mass, a waterproofing project. And I will turn it over to Dariel.
Mr. Chair, before Dariel begins, I just want to let everyone know there's a little bit of lag in the connection, so we might have to wait a couple seconds before the next person speaks. And board members, again, if you need to make a comment or question, please raise your hand in front of the webcam. Thank you. Go ahead, Dariel. Dee, you need to unmute your microphone. There we go.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
All right. So in May 2013, the CRA purchased a property located at 820 North Massachusetts Avenue at the appraised value of $538,000. Since then, approximately $3.1 million has been spent on site and building renovations. House management and artifacts began occupying the space in June of 2017. Since then, house management has held a total of 316 events, averaging around 79 annually, and their average monthly payment from the time that they've occupied the space is $842.62 before taxes and any other fees. Next slide. Throughout this time, staff received numerous reports of water intrusion, from the presence of water stains to seeing water dripping from the roof and through the brick to water pouring into the building from the roof. Staff has taken several measures to determine where the water is coming from and to make the necessary repairs. In April of 2018, the roof was patched in the areas of the leaks. In September and October of 2018, the leaking windows were resealed. Next slide. In September and November of 2018, the drainage pipes were inspected and repaired. These images on the screen are just images or footage from the cameras that were sent down through those pipes. In October of 2018, due to reports of water still entering the building through the roof, staff hired a roofer to reseal the entire roof on the building. In November of 2018, we hired a mason to fill in the gaps between the building and the concrete walkways, as well as some of the voids on the interior walls. Next slide. A substantial amount of water was still entering the building through the brick walls and under the door on the south side of the building. As you can see here, there were multiple locations where the grassy area between house and our now yard on mass areas had washed out, and it allowed water to pool just behind the building. As you can see that pool of water right there on the screen. Due to where the knee wall terminates, even more water was channeled towards the south door. Next slide. In addition, there were sections of grass at both ends of the little sidewalk you see there that impeded the flow of water to Massachusetts Avenue, which also contributed to the pooling of water outside the south door. Next slide. In September of 2019, the CRA paid $40,000 to the city's construction and maintenance department to regrade the site between house and yard on mass. They created a gradual slope from the yard on mass handicap parking spaces to the sidewalk. Also, the two sections of grass at the ends of the sidewalks were removed and replaced with concrete, connecting the three sections of concrete. Next slide. Lastly, C&M extended the knee wall 10 feet to the east and up to 4 feet high to channel the water away from the building towards Massachusetts Avenue. Since completion, staff has not received any complaints of water entering the building through the south side door. Next slide. Professional Service Industries was contracted to conduct a field and water test in order to waterproof the building. The test revealed that the brick mortar joints are deteriorated, cracking, and showing evidence of plant growth throughout the masonry walls. No evidence of previous point work was observed. The current paint finish is thin and stained with plant growth at various locations. PSI provided a report of the recommended repairs, which was included in your packets. Next slide. Staff worked with the city's purchasing and facilities department, as well as PSI, to obtain proposals for the repairs outlined in the report. At the recommendation of PSI, staff would like to contract with Crystal Companies to complete the repairs to the building. With your approval, we will submit a recommendation to the City Commission to issue the notice of intent to award the contract. And I'll stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Darielle. And so I will open this up to any board comments or questions. And at the same time, I will ask Jonathan if there's potentially anyone from the public that's on the phone that wants to speak about this item.
Mr. Chair, I don't have anybody from the public, but Fiorella Hall with Facilities is present.
Okay.
I'd also like to point out
Fiorella,
that David with PSI is present as well for any technical questions.
Yes, good afternoon. That's correct. This is Fiorella Hall, Facility Maintenance Public Works. I'm available for any question, as well as David Green, which is the engineer from PSI Intratech, which has done the study and the assessment, as well as provided the letter of recommendation.
Thank you, Fee. So board members, any question, comments? Motion for approval?
Mr. Lake? Mr. Lake? Go ahead and unmute your mic, Mr. Lake. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Eddie Lake. Is the business functioning currently through this crisis?
They have held the events that were on their calendar that did not postpone. I believe maybe one or two may have gone on, but for them, they are not scheduling any new events.
And what is the current time. And what is the current status of those items?
The repairs that are needed?
Yes.
They are as is. They have not been repaired. If there's a heavy rain, there will be water entering the building. Luckily, we have not had a heavy rain lately. So, but I would say that if there's an event going on and there's a heavy rain at this point in time, water will get into the building.
Mr. Wiley?
I think we need to make these repairs. We really have to. I mean, I don't know that we have any choice. Ultimately, I think this will probably destroy the building at some point if this isn't fixed. And if we wait to repair it, it's only going to be more expensive. And we have the tenant that we need to consider too. Those are just my comments.
I agree.
Mr. Lake?
Yeah, Elise, I think I saw your hand go up. Or
thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wiley, he touched on it, so I'll seize my time.
I did just wonder if Fiorella could just make note of the big discrepancy with the initial bid, and then how this inspection helped kind of clarify some things to be able to select the winner of the RFP. Could you speak to that, Elise? Or Fiorella?
Commissioner, I think I would like to give that, cede my time to to David, because he was critical in the evaluation of he had to normalize the bids, one, because we had such a wide range, and then he put out an addendum, help us clarify what those numbers will be. So David, if you could weigh in on that.
Yeah, we did the evaluation on the building, did some water infiltration testing, as they discussed, and found that, with a durational type rain that we typically experience here in Florida, water will eventually work its way through the mortar joints of the brick and to the interior, where you can actually physically see the water dripping down the walls on the interior as well as around the windows. So with that, we issued the bids, the invitation to bids from various restoration contractors in the state. Some of them we've had experience with, some of them we haven't. And through that process of our estimation of the work, there was a little confusion with the subcontractors in regards to the amount of what I refer to as point work for the masonry. And the reason for that point work is with the type of performance coating that we're putting on the exterior, or that we're recommending to go on the exterior of the building. The manufacturer of that coating has requirements as far as what it can bridge and what it can't bridge, and maintain its warranted performance. So with that, there was a lot of point work that was needed to be completed on the project prior to the application of the coating. So some of the contractors understood it, and some of them misinterpreted it and put in inaccurate numbers, basically. So we had to reevaluate that and send it out for a rebid, or not a rebid, but just have them addendum the numbers. And through that, Crystal Clean was selected as the low bidder. There was one really low bidder, and my experience, I've worked as a GC for large contractors, and usually when there's a really low bid, it's either there's a misunderstanding, or they're trying to just get the number low so they can get the job, and then when they get in there, they'll what they call change order everything to increase their number, basically, to kind of make up for what they didn't include in their original bid. So, and I couldn't get in contact with that contractor to clarify that. So, Crystal Clean was recommended in our opinion, and based on Crystal Clean's record, with their, that they provided, and the contacts that I reached out, they seem to be impeccable in their results as far as their performance in completing work, and their not only ability to complete it, but also to make sure that they did a good job. And if there was ever any problems, they would address it immediately and make sure that they were going above and beyond what they were contracted to do. Hopefully that helps clarify anything there.
A thumbs up from Commissioner Madden. I don't see any other hands, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay, so she did. Well, okay, go ahead, Brandon and Cliff.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this work as recommended.
I Lake second the motion.
So we have a motion. Does anyone? Okay. I think we may have had 2 seconds, but we had one voice and one by hand, I believe. So anyway, great. So we have a motion and a second. You had your hand up?
I had a question. I just had a question about the work. Can I ask it? I just wondered what the warranty period was for this project, and what the expected life of these improvements will be to the building before we may have to address this again.
Yeah. The type of coating we recommended is what's referred to as an elastomeric coating. Sometimes elastomerics get a bad connotation because of, in the early days of elastomerics, they weren't breathable. And with that, when you encapsulate a building in a coating that's not breathable, one of two things is going to happen. It's going to, trap moisture on the inside, and then you may have issues on the inside, or it's going to, start to bubble and do things. So I try to get the moisture out. In modern, technology, elastomeric has come a long way to be very breathable. And by that, they have what's referred to, I'm pulling a blank on the term, but they're breathable to allow vapor transmission, as a building goes through its cycles, especially here in Florida, cool on the inside, hot on the outside. There's a lot of vapor that actually goes through a wall that people aren't aware of. And if that becomes trapped, you can create problems that you didn't have prior. The coating we've recommended, there was 2 coatings. One was Dow Corning Hogard, and one was Sherwin-Williams locks on XP. The AllGuard is a silicone-based product, and the Sherwin-Williams is an acrylic-based product. And the difference between the two is that a silicone-based product, it's very specific. And in the future, you would have to go over it again with AllGuard and to keep the warranty with that. Now, AllGuard comes with a 10-year warranty, as does the Sherwin-Williams. But due to the specifics of the AllGuard, the board decided that the Sherwin-Williams was a better option. And we didn't take exception to that because I've worked with it and seen it perform. It's a good product. It comes with a 10-year warranty if installed with what's called the weather-tight warranty. And the subcontractors have bid it as such, and they're familiar with the product and with the application methods to meet that. So that's to answer your question. It's going to be a 10-year warranty. It's a performance coating. It's not just like painting it. I mean, it's a process, and you have to follow procedures. The manufacturer, in this case Sherwin-Williams, will conduct periodic site visits during the application. And with each site visit, they'll issue a report. And at the end of it, they'll issue a final report to show that the application methods were in accordance with their warranty, and they'll issue the warranty based on that.
Mr. Wiley, go ahead.
Is there any reappointing that needs to be done in addition to just the coating, or?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of brickwork, a lot of cleaning, and a lot of brickwork that has to happen here because, as they mentioned earlier, there's a lot of joints that have plant growth. All that has to be cleaned out. It has to be pressure washed to the point to where, you know, if the existing coating is thin or flaking off, all that has to be taken care of. During the pressure washing, it's very possible that some of the mortar joints will become dislodged and will require repointing. And then there's a lot of current joints, just because of the type of building it is and the age of it. You know, back in those days, a lot of times it's what's referred to as a double white wall. So with the brickwork, they weren't worried about really tight tooled joints. So a lot of the exterior joints aren't very watertight to begin with. And all that has to be addressed with either sealant or new mortar. And that is all part of the scope of work prior to the application of the coating.
Are you or a consultant going to inspect all the work in each phase of the work that's going to be done on the building?
Yes, sir. I will be the consultant on the project.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Cliff. Any other comments from board members or questions? Cliff, you asked my question. I just want to know how long it might be before we're looking at having to basically reseal the building again. So hopefully we do get 10 years out of it.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Mr. Lake, did you have a question?
Calling for the question. Ready to vote. All right. So we have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation of staff. So I'll start the roll call with myself, and I'll say aye. Pastor Lake? Aye. Zelda?
Aye.
Dean? Dean?
Dean, you have to unmute your mic.
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
Brandon,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
Oh, looks like his screen froze. Mr. Mundy, are you there? Okay. Brandy, if you can give Mr. Mundy a call. I believe Mr. Lake, as vice chair, you can meeting. Garrett, you need to say something?
No, I'm fine with that suggestion. I just was going to ask for kind of maybe a tally of where we were, and then we can pass the gavel, so to speak.
Okay. I believe that was the last vote.
That was the last vote? So that was Cliff? Was that Cliff?
No, Cliff did not vote.
I didn't vote yet either, but aye.
Cliff votes
Commissioner
aye.
Madden.
Commissioner Madden
Aye.
and Cliff.
Aye.
Now, what I did not hear all of the votes, so was it unanimous?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Okay, motion carries, approved.
All right.
Now,
We have our, want to go to item, or do we want, is that Mr. Vice Chair?
can we move to the next item, the lease addendum?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. We'll receive that report now from Elise.
All right, thank you very much. What we have before you today is lease addendum for House Management LLC. Next slide, please. And DRL provided a great deal of background on the acquisition and renovation of the property. Our lease with House 820, or House Management, excuse me, encompasses the space that is known as House 820 and also the space known as the Collective. That lease commenced in June of 2017 with a shared parking agreement. Next slide, please. During 2017, CRA also acquired several other properties. And so if you see the properties that are in light green there, those properties were also acquired in 2017 as we moved through the year. And then the CRA also made improvements to those lots, that lot that is in blue to the north, and we leased that property for parking to the tax collector's office. So for a point of reference, you see the property there in pink, that is House 820. Next slide, please. So in 2018, the CRA approved
myself. I
believe.
All right, Mr. Mundy's trying to reconnect. Continue, Elise.
Okay. With that, in 2018, CRA approved a food truck park construction on the east portion of this site. So if you all recall, that parking, what is now Yard on Mass, what used to be a car lot. And so just to the east, to the west of that is the surface parking that is included in House's shared use parking agreement in the lease. So around this time, staff initiated discussions for adoption of that shared parking agreement with the understanding that we would have multiple tenants utilizing the space. And throughout this process, we've worked to try to understand what would be best and most beneficial for all tenants. And so what I'll do now is I'll go through the lease addendum items as being proposed to you today. It took us about 18 months to get to this point where we feel like we have something that is tangible for all parties. Again, with the construction of Yard on Mass, we had to improve that parking lot, and that parking lot now carries about 70 stalls. So next slide, please. first item. Thank you. So this is an as-built of the parking lot that is adjacent to Yard on Mass. And again, this is being incorporated into the lease addendum to clarify the parking. If you see here, there is those items that are outlined in gray are concrete. There are approximately 6 parking spaces that will be utilized for house management to load into the rear of the building for event purposes. The rest of the parking spaces are surface parking. They are grass parking spaces, with a few of them being paved for use by Yard on Mass. Next slide, please. The next item. What we have here is Lot 2, and this second lot is just to the west of House 820 and Artifact. This lot is approximately 84 spaces, with 64 of those spaces being for the exclusive use of House 820. The additional spaces are being proposed for use by Talbot House. They've asked us for some parking. Those are hashed out in this map, and that is during daytime use as well. Next item, please. Okay, so this is proposed lot, and this lot does not yet exist. And so throughout our conversations, we've come to realize that we need to build a new lot. And in constructing this new parking lot for shared use of all tenants. Again, approximately 55 total spaces, with 40 of those being grass on site. The additional spaces will be in the right of way as on-street parking spaces. So again, this is just item 1 of several that we are cleaning up within the lease addendum. Again, these are included as exhibits to your documents there. I'm sorry, someone else is trying to get in there. Next slide, please. So just for additional clarifications for you, item 2 clarifies the lease space. Currently within the lease agreement, there are approximately 7,200 square feet of interior event space, 4,800 square feet of office space in the collective. Well, in this modification, we're including the exterior courtyard as a portion of the lease space, 6,690 square feet. Item number 3 being clarified is the initial lease term and commencement date. And as Dario has pointed out, since the lease initiated in June 2017, we had tons of issues with providing our tenant with a dry building. And so in some of this conversation, we felt it very much prudent for us to shift that commencement date of the lease term to August of 2018. Item number 4 corrects the income source for which the tenant's rent is based. This was a give back from the tenant. Right now, the leasing includes a provision that has a 7.5% rent and tax cap, meaning that if we attempt to pass through those property taxes, they would not fully be passed through to the tenant because there is a cap there on those monies that can be provided to the CRA. So what we've done is we've removed that cap. Item number 5, again, is an item that we've negotiated through, and the tenant has provided some relief to us there. The tenant did have 2 automatic 5-year renewals. And so what we've done here is we've incorporated a 5-year renewal with the second renewal at 3 years of market rate upon mutual consent. And this allows for the lease to terminate at the life of the Midtown CRA. So we don't have a lease term that extends beyond those years. And then number 6 clarifies the permitted uses. And again, that office use for the collective was not specified within the original lease. And we're going to clean that up and just include that office use. Lastly, second to last here, we've got the lessee's responsibility for maintenance and also clarifying the maintenance language of responsibility. The CRA provides repairs and preventative maintenance to the facility, and what we've done here is incorporate a preventative maintenance schedule. If you have heard us leaning off Fiorella, it's because her and her team provide maintenance to the facility as they do to other city facilities. We used to have a private maintenance contractor providing those services, And so in making this change and doing this internally, we're saving 60% of what we expended in previous budget cycles. So for us, this is an efficiency and improvement, and it allows for us to provide some predictability for the tenant relative to what will occur and when, and then also what those bill backs will be to the tenant should there be any issues. And then lastly, the tenant is seeking some additional leasehold improvements here. And so next slide, please. And so with the adoption of this lease addendum, this is included within the addendum. It is the ability to utilize approximately $100,000 for leasehold improvements. These are improvements that are necessary just relative to the tenant's ability to be able to shift to market one, and then also provide a quality venue. And so these items that you see before us are listed. It's a combination of lighting, electrical upgrades, in particular some stage lighting, and projectors, and audio visual improvements to the space. Additionally, it's a partition that will prevent folks from walking through Artifact and disrupting events that may take place in House 820. So, you know, there could be an artist in Artifact wearing shorts and a t-shirt, walk right in to go to the shared restroom, and then walk right into a formal event. And so just kind of mitigating some of those conflicts that may take place. So again, $100,000 in leasehold improvements enclosed within the addendum. And what I'll do here is I'll take questions shortly, but I wanted to make sure that the board is clear on the considerations. And so as listed in the agenda, they are incorrect. So next slide, please. So what I have here is two items. The first is, one, staff needs the ability, the approval to go forth and build this parking lot out. We have not priced out the parking lot in its entirety for lot 3, but I can tell you that we've spent anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 on the 2 lots that we did have to improve, and those are grass parking lots. The reason for the expense is lighting, landscaping, irrigation, and fencing, and then also we end up putting in some base gravel to prevent the vehicles from getting stuck on the grass space. And then also there's in this area, because it's one where there are gaps in the sidewalk network, we will have to install a sidewalk there, a pretty good linear distance of that. So it's just a range on that price that we'll have to spend. And so staff is looking for authorization to go forward with that parking lot to support mass market area development. And then also, because we do have some conflict for our tenant with being able to park cars immediately in the vicinity of the building and the event venue, we want to support the daytime events by providing valet services until we build that 3rd lot for events with attendance over 200 attendees. And of course, we would just receive that notification from the tenant, and then we would provide those services and support. So in combination, we're looking for, again, lot 3 as one item with the valet parking. And then the second item for consideration is to recommend the adoption of the lease addendum changes that are before you here to include $100,000 in leasehold improvements, which would then move to real estate for approval. And I'll take any questions. Again, the lease addendum is included within your agenda packet, and the parking exhibits and the preventative maintenance schedule is also included if you need to reference those documents.
It looks like we have Mr. Mundy reconnected with us, so I believe he can resume as chair. Mr. Mundy, can you hear us? You have to unmute your mic.
All right, now I'm back. Thank you. I apologize for that interruption. I'll do what I can to prevent that from happening next time. So Elise has made his presentation. I'll now open it up to the board for any questions, comments, discussion.
Mr. Wiley, then Commissioner Madden.
Commissioner Madden can go first.
Thank you, Chair. I had several questions. So I heard it mentioned earlier that this building has approximately 3.1 million in investment so far. Is that correct? Like, maybe I'll say a few things because of the technology. So, and then so in my mind, I just like to see what the total investment is in this building. So if it's 3.1 million, and then you said we've done about 150,000 is what will be for the additional parking, and we've already paid that in parking, but that was shared parking, so that probably benefited more people or more businesses. And then the ceiling of the building. You know, my thing is, you know, I know that, you know, certainly this was the first building, you know, to move into that area, and so it had the biggest risk to go into that area. But I know that the CRA's vision ultimately is kind of an iterative process of, you know, revitalizing an area, making investments in several businesses, all, you know, and then all collectively that investment then removes the blight and builds up the area. I'm worried about, you know, putting so much money into one project or one business. It doesn't, I know sometimes when we invest, we have the opportunity to, on the other end, get taxes, you know, like in Meriton. This is a city-owned business, so, or building, so we won't have that. When did you say did you say that in 3 years it would go to market value?
No, Commissioner. So, if I may, so there is a lease renewal. So after the close of the initial term, which would be 23. Then there would be an additional 5-year renewal. And then at that second renewal, then it would go to market.
So they have 3 more years on the reduced rent?
They would have an additional 2 years, I believe. Almost 3 years. That's correct, Commissioner, almost 3.
And that's from now?
That is correct. It would be from 2018, August of 2018.
Okay, and they're not paying currently. They're not paying any rent on the collective space.
That is correct, Commissioner. The rent paid to us is based upon House 820's. It's a DR15, which reports gross sales of the events in House 820 only, and that is how we apply that rent payment. Okay,
and am I correct that that was $842.62, or was it? I heard earlier it was like $842.62 a month was the average.
I think the RL is referring to the average rent since occupancy, which would include a period of time in which the tenant was paying 0 rent because of the conditions within the lease term. So just kind of fast forwarding, that has that has increased over the years since the initial occupancy. I can tell you that I think I do have the numbers here for each year. So those averages are for 2018, and this is base rent. So this does not include, management fees, but that would be for 2020 that we've averaged $1,266 a month, not including those management fees. Typically, the total in combination, if we just said triple net, it's approximately $2,500 would be that average.
Okay, so $2,500 a month. And then, I also know, like, when we were going through the joinery, they, really were hoping to have some more, and that was in a city-owned building, but, so that was a really big reason why, we couldn't give more, because it wasn't a city-owned building. This is a city-owned building. I was just wondering, with regard to, I know sometimes we use a formula, a percentage of skin in the game, so to speak, like, how much the business has invested versus how much the city comes alongside, and how we don't, want to make sure we're not, investing too large of a percent with any one business. Do you have, could you tell us, what the percentage of the businesses capital investments have been so far?
So I know that Laura is online with us, and she did provide some general information to us, and I'll let her speak to some of the investments that she's made to date as well, if she would like to do so.
Yeah, we have Ms. Shannon and Mr. Parker. Laura, if you could just connect your camera and you can go ahead and speak. Okay, I can see you. You just need to unmute your mic.
Hi there. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, Stephanie, if I can answer that question in entirety right now. I can pull those numbers and happily provide those to the board. One of the things that I have provided in the conversation that we've had with the CRA is just talking through repairs that have needed to be made due to the situation and to the condition of the building. So I've got all sorts of different numbers pulled. I don't have that one in particular. The one thing I will say is that we have been looking at doing a courtyard improvement, and numbers coming back on that are about $25,000. That was something that we've talked about with the CRA board not being included in this lease addendum, that the exterior improvements would not be something that can be considered part of the leasehold improvements. So that was my next forecast, I guess, for where I invest next. But if the board would like for me to provide those numbers, I'm happy to.
Okay, so it just helps me kind of wrap my brain around each project, as we listen to them. And, certainly, like I said, with the other project, we're just under a lot more scrutiny right now with how we're spending every dollar, with people, being so financially struggling in downtown. So I certainly want to make sure that, we get that building sealed and we give them the parking that we need. And I, want them to, have every chance of success after things open up. But I am reticent to spend any more money on one project just because then, I know that, I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to do that bridge across, Bartow Road to extend Massachusetts and the pedestrian traffic. I know that, there are other businesses, neighboring, and the more smaller investments we can do in an area collectively, I think has the biggest impact with regard to the CRA mission. So that it does give me pause to spend any more money on that building since we've already put so much into it. And I do know that, certainly, like I said, it has to be a functioning building, and we have to be, good landlords and make sure that roof and those walls, and that they have everything they need to have a safe, clean environment. But I'm typically used to mostly interior upgrades, as a business owner myself, being, more of the tenant obligation that they do, and they invest and have, in most leases that I've seen, that's not typically, the landlord doesn't really improve the inside for the business. But so those are just some of my thoughts. Thank you for just letting me, kind of grapple with that and think about it, because, like I said, it is, as a city commissioner, I just have a unique place on this board, that this is going to also come to the commission for scrutiny. And, we certainly want, an open government in the sunshine, but every dollar, really matters right now. So thank you for letting me ask those questions. And thank you, Laura, for presenting today.
Go ahead.